There are moments in life that defy explanation, events so profoundly bizarre, so utterly improbable, they force us to question the very fabric of our reality. What if a whisper, a mere echo from the deepest corners of your slumber, held the key to unlocking a truth that had been buried for decades? What if that whisper, spoken by a voice you'd never heard, led you on a journey so harrowing, so emotionally raw, it would forever redefine who you believed you were? This isn't a fairy tale, nor is it a work of fiction. This is the unbelievable, gut-wrenching account of a man who did just that. He followed a stranger's voice in a dream, and through a series of inexplicable twists and turns, found his sister. A sister he never knew he had. Our story begins not in a bustling metropolis, but in the quiet, unassuming town of Willow Creek, nestled deep within the rolling hills of rural Oregon. Here, amidst the whispering pines and the gentle flow of the Willamette River, lived a man named Ethan Vance. Ethan, at 42, was the epitome of stability. A successful architect, his life was meticulously structured, every blueprint precise, every calculation exact. He lived in a charming craftsman-style home, surrounded by the tangible evidence of his disciplined life. Meticulously organized bookshelves, a perfectly manicured garden, and the quiet companionship of his golden retriever, Barley. Ethan was a man of logic, a man who believed in what he could see, touch, and measure. The abstract, the mystical, the realm of dreams, these were territories he rarely ventured into, and certainly never took seriously. Yet, it was in this very realm, a place he dismissed as mere subconscious chatter, that the threads of his extraordinary journey began to weave themselves. It started subtly, a faint tremor in the night, easily dismissed as a restless sleep. But then, the tremors grew into something more distinct, more insistent. It was a voice, not a booming, authoritative voice, but a soft, almost ethereal whisper. A woman's voice, imbued with an undeniable urgency. The first time he heard it clearly, he was adrift in the hazy landscape of a dream, standing on what felt like a desolate, windswept coastline. The air was thick with the scent of salt and an inexplicable sense of sorrow. And then, it came, clear as a bell, cutting through the dream's muted tones. "Find me, please, Willow Creek." Ethan woke with a jolt, his heart hammering against his ribs. He sat upright in bed, the phantom sound of the waves still echoing in his ears. Willow Creek. He was in Willow Creek. The absurdity of it made him chuckle, a dry, nervous sound in the quiet bedroom. He dismissed it as a vivid dream, a product of a late-night documentary or a forgotten conversation. He was a rational man after all. Dreams were just dreams. But the voice returned, night after night. Sometimes it was just the plea, "Find me." Other times it was more specific, hinting at locations. The old mill, the covered bridge, always interwoven with that haunting plea. It became a torment, eroding his restful sleep, seeping into his waking hours. Ethan, despite his skepticism, found himself increasingly preoccupied. He'd catch himself staring blankly at the old, disused lumber mill at the edge of town, a place he'd driven past thousands of times without a second thought. He'd pause at the historic covered bridge over Miller's Creek, an unsettling feeling prickling at the back of his neck. He tried to ignore it, to logic it away. He changed his routine, hoping to break the pattern. He went to bed earlier, later, tried different sleep aids. Nothing worked. The voice persisted, a relentless, spectral presence in his nights. The emotional toll began to show. His focused demeanor at work started to fray. Colleagues noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands when he sketched a design. Friends inquired about his unusual quietness during their weekly poker nights. He offered vague explanations, attributing it to stress, to a demanding project. How could he possibly explain that he was being haunted by a dream voice, pleading for him to find her? He, Ethan Vance, the architect of precision, sounding like someone who belonged in a paranormal investigation show. The thought alone was mortifying. One particularly restless night, the dream was different. Instead of just a voice, there was a fleeting image. A young woman, her face obscured by shadow, but her hair a striking cascade of fiery auburn, almost copper, tied back with a simple, dark ribbon. She was in a dimly lit room, a single window casting a faint, dusty shaft of moonlight across a worn wooden floor. And then, the voice, clearer than ever, filled with an unbearable anguish. "My name is Eleanor. They took me. Please, find me. Willow Creek. Eleanor." The name resonated with a strange, undeniable familiarity, a distant echo from a place he couldn't quite grasp. The detail of the auburn hair, the specific name, it felt too real, too vivid to be a mere figment of his imagination. He awoke drenched in a cold sweat, a profound sense of dread settling in his stomach. This was no longer just a recurring dream. This was something else entirely. A chilling certainty began to take root in his mind, something his rational self fought against with every fiber of his being. What if this wasn't a dream at all? What if it was a desperate plea from someone truly lost, truly in need? The sheer audacity of the thought was terrifying. It flew in the face of everything he believed. But the nagging feeling, the unshakable conviction that he had to do something, grew too strong to ignore. His first step, as any logical person might attempt, was to search online. He typed Eleanor Willow Creek disappearance into his search bar. Nothing. He tried variations. Missing woman Willow Creek. Unsolved cases Oregon. Still nothing relevant. The internet, that vast repository of information, yielded no clues. This only deepened the mystery, amplifying the sense of isolation around his unusual experience. If Eleanor was truly missing, why was there no record? Was she a phantom? A hallucination? Or was he losing his mind? The thought was a cold, sharp blade. Yet the dreams continued, growing more intense, more detailed. He started seeing glimpses of a small, wooden locket, intricately carved, in the young woman's hand. He heard fragments of conversations, distorted and muffled, but with recurring words: secret, family, truth. The urgency in the voice grew palpable, a desperate plea that transcended the boundaries of sleep. Ethan was a man caught between two worlds: his ordered, rational waking life, and the chaotic, emotionally charged realm of his dreams. The line between them blurred, becoming increasingly permeable. One morning, after a dream so vivid it felt like a memory, he found himself standing in his kitchen, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hand. The image of the young woman, Eleanor with her striking auburn hair, was burned into his mind. He remembered the specific anguish in her voice, the plea that tore at something deep within him. It was a plea for help, not from a fictional character, but from someone real, someone suffering. The logical side of him screamed for him to stop, to seek professional help, to dismiss this as a mental breakdown. But another, primal part of him, a part he hadn't known existed, urged him forward. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being called, that he had a profound, inexplicable connection to this mysterious Eleanor. This feeling, this unshakable sense of duty, finally overshadowed his skepticism. It was an impulse that defied all reason, a leap of faith into the unknown. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he had to follow the voice. He had to find Eleanor. His journey, however, would not begin with a search warrant or a detective's badge. It would begin with something far more ancient and far more personal. A desperate hope, fueled by the whispers of a dream, and a profound, unsettling question. Who was Eleanor, and why was she calling to him? The answer, he was about to discover, would shatter his perception of his own life, revealing a past far more intricate and tragic than he could ever have imagined. The ordinary man from Willow Creek was about to embark on an extraordinary quest, guided only by the haunting echo of a stranger's plea, leading him down a path riddled with secrets, lies, and a truth that had been patiently waiting to be unearthed. Ethan Vance, the architect of logic, was now a man adrift in a sea of his own making, guided by nothing but the ethereal whispers of a dream. He knew he couldn't simply walk into the Willow Creek Sheriff's office and declare, "A woman named Eleanor is talking to me in my dreams, telling me to find her." They'd likely suggest a psychiatric evaluation, not a search party. No, This had to be his journey, a solitary, desperate quest for a truth that resonated deep within his soul, even if his rational mind screamed against it. His first tangible lead, if one could call it that, came from the scattered fragments of the dreams themselves. The old mill, the covered bridge, these weren't random places. They were landmarks in Willow Creek, places he knew intimately. The old Willow Creek lumber mill, a decaying relic from the town's industrial past, stood like a skeleton against the horizon, its skeletal structure slowly succumbing to the relentless embrace of nature. It had been closed for decades, a place where teenagers snuck in for dares and urban explorers sought ghostly photographs. The covered bridge, an iconic structure dating back to the late 1800s, was a tourist attraction, its weathered timbers a testament to time. Both places, in their own ways, held echoes of the past. Ethan started with the mill, not with a flashlight and a sense of daring, but with a quiet, almost reverent approach. He drove by it day after day, observing. He walked the perimeter, not looking for clues, but trying to feel something, to connect with the almost spectral sense of urgency the dream voice conveyed. He felt foolish, absurd, yet the pull was undeniable. The mill felt cold, dead, a tomb of forgotten industry. But then, a subtle detail caught his eye. A small, almost imperceptible discoloration on one of the ancient, moss-covered brick walls, near what used to be a loading dock. It was a faint, almost faded etching. Not letters, but a symbol. A simple, almost childlike drawing of a tiny, delicate flower. A forget-me-not. The image of the forget-me-not pulsed in his mind, somehow connecting to the fleeting glimpse of Eleanor's locket in his dream. He hadn't seen the locket clearly, but the dream felt so real. Was it possible? Could this tiny, almost invisible marking be a deliberate sign? His architect's eye, trained to spot the minutiae, noted the deliberate strokes, the care with which it had been etched. This wasn't vandalism. This was a message. But from whom? And to whom? He carefully took a photograph, zooming in, hoping to find more details, but the image remained stubbornly enigmatic. Days bled into weeks. Ethan's life became a strange duality. By day, he was the meticulous architect, designing elegant homes and functional spaces. By night, and increasingly in his waking hours, he was an amateur detective, following the phantom breadcrumbs of his dreams. He started frequenting the local library, a charming, old building with dusty shelves and the comforting scent of aging paper. He delved into local history archives, searching for anything connected to the mill, to old families, to disappearances. He found articles about industrial accidents, about the mill's eventual decline, but nothing about a missing person named Eleanor, or anyone with striking auburn hair, or any symbol resembling a forget-me-not. The silence in the records was deafening, unsettling. His search then shifted to the covered bridge. It was a more open, public space, so his investigations had to be more subtle. He'd walk across it slowly, pretending to admire the craftsmanship, while his eyes scanned every beam, every plank, every crevice. He'd linger, listening to the murmurs of the creek below, the rustle of leaves, hoping for another whisper, another sign. The bridge hummed with the echoes of countless footsteps, countless stories, but none of them offered him Eleanor. One afternoon, as he stood near the entrance of the bridge, a sudden gust of wind rustled through the nearby trees, dislodging something from an old, gnarled oak. Tumbled to the ground, small and glinting. Ethan's heart leaped. He bent down and picked it up. It was a small, tarnished silver locket, intricately carved, and on its surface, almost worn away by time and the elements, was the faint etching of a tiny, delicate flower. A forget-me-not. His hand trembled as he held it. This wasn't a coincidence. This was too precise, too specific. The locket from his dream. The forget-me-not from the mill wall. A cold wave of adrenaline washed over him, followed by a sudden, overwhelming sense of grief, as if he had just touched a profound sorrow. The locket was old, clearly very old. It had been exposed to the elements for a long time. This wasn't something recently dropped. This was a relic, a silent testament to a past event. He fumbled with the clasp, his fingers clumsy with anticipation. It sprang open with a faint click. Inside, nestled beneath a thin layer of grime, were two faded photographs. One, barely discernible, showed a young woman. Even through the blur and discoloration, Ethan felt a jolt. The hair, that striking, fiery auburn cascade. It was Eleanor, and the second photograph, equally faded, was of a much younger man. A boy really, with dark, intense eyes that somehow felt familiar. Ethan stared at the boy's image, a strange, inexplicable ache in his chest. He felt a connection, a resonance that went beyond reason. He rushed home, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities and terrifying implications. He cleaned the locket carefully, gently wiping away the decades of dirt. The images, though still faded, became clearer. Eleanor's face, though still partially obscured, was beautiful, with a gentle, somewhat melancholic expression. And the boy had his eyes, his own eyes. It was a mirror image of himself at a younger age. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The boy in the locket was him, his world tilted on its axis. He, Ethan Vance, the only child of Amelia and Robert Vance, was suddenly confronted with an undeniable truth that shattered his entire personal history. If that was him, a child, in the locket with Eleanor, it could only mean one thing. Eleanor was his sister, a sister he had never known, a sister who, according to his dreams, was lost, had been taken. The whispers in the dark, the desperate pleas, the haunting urgency. It all coalesced into a terrifying, heart-wrenching narrative. His parents, Amelia and Robert, they had always been loving, if a bit reserved. He'd grown up in a stable home, his childhood seemingly idyllic. How could they have kept such a monumental secret? How could they have allowed him to believe he was an only child when a sister, an elder sister perhaps, had existed? The questions swirled, a maelstrom of confusion and betrayal. He felt a profound sense of loss, not just for Eleanor, but for the childhood he thought he had, for the truth that had been withheld. The locket, clutched tightly in his hand, felt heavy, not just with its physical weight, but with the burden of untold stories. The name Eleanor, once a mysterious echo, was now a name imbued with family, with blood, with an unimaginable tragedy. His journey, which began as a reluctant pursuit of a dream, had just transformed into an agonizing quest for his own past, for the truth about his family, and for the fate of the sister he was now, irrevocably, bound to find. The comfortable, logical life of Ethan Vance was gone, replaced by a desperate, emotional drive to unravel a mystery that began long before he could even remember. The locket was not just a clue. It was a key, unlocking a Pandora's box of family secrets that would change everything he thought he knew about himself and his origins. The revelation of the locket was a seismic shock that ripped through the meticulously constructed world of Ethan Vance. His stable, predictable life had, in an instant, been exposed as a carefully woven tapestry of secrets and omissions. The once comforting walls of his childhood home now seemed to echo with unspoken truths, the very air thick with the weight of decades of silence. Eleanor wasn't just a voice in a dream. She was a ghost from his own bloodline, a tangible link to a past that had been systematically erased. With the locket clutched tight, its tarnished silver a cold anchor in his shaking hand, Ethan knew he couldn't delay the inevitable. The truth, however painful, had to be confronted. He drove to his parents' modest, well-maintained home, a place that had always represented comfort and security. Now it felt like a fortress built on deception. His parents, Amelia Vance, a woman of gentle demeanor with a quiet strength, and Robert Vance, a stoic man of few words, were in their late 60s, enjoying their retirement. They were pillars of the Willow Creek community, known for their unwavering integrity. The thought of them harboring such a profound secret was almost physically painful. He found them in the living room, Robert absorbed in a crossword puzzle, Amelia knitting by the window. The scene was so utterly normal, so familiar, that it intensified the surreal nature of what he was about to do. He sat opposite them, the locket hidden in his pocket, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He started cautiously, asking about their early years, about his own birth, trying to probe for any cracks in their well-practiced narrative. Their answers were the usual, comfortable stories he'd heard countless times. The air was thick with unasked questions, with the truth waiting to explode. Finally, he couldn't bear the pretense any longer. He pulled the locket from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table between them. The glint of tarnished silver, the faint etching of the forget-me-not, caught Amelia's eye first. Her knitting needles stilled. Robert looked up from his crossword, his brow furrowed in mild annoyance. Then his gaze fell upon the locket. The change in them was immediate, profound, and devastating to witness. Amelia's face, usually soft and warm, drained of all color, becoming ashen. Her hand flew to her mouth, a silent gasp. Robert's stoicism crumbled. His eyes, usually unwavering, widened with a mixture of shock and profound sadness. A tremor ran through his hands, making the newspaper rustle. The comfortable silence of the room was replaced by a suffocating tension. Where did you get this, Ethan?" Amelia's voice was a ragged whisper, barely audible. Ethan looked from his mother's stricken face to his father's pained expression. "I found it, near the old mill, then by the covered bridge. And the dreams, Mom, Dad, the dreams. A voice calling to me, a name, Eleanor." He paused, letting the name hang in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Who is Eleanor? And why is a picture of me as a child in this locket with her? The dam broke. Amelia began to weep, soft, guttural sobs that shook her slender frame. Robert reached for her hand, his own hand trembling. His voice, when it finally came, was rough, thick with unshed tears and decades of burden. "Ethan, we never wanted you to know. We wanted to protect you." What unfolded over the next few hours was a story of unimaginable grief, desperate choices, and a secret meticulously guarded for over 4 decades. Amelia, her voice punctuated by sobs, and Robert, his eyes fixed on some distant, painful memory, began to tell him about Eleanor. Eleanor was their firstborn, his older sister by 3 years. Her hair, as Ethan had seen in the faded photograph, was a striking, vibrant auburn, just like her mother's was in her youth. She was a bright, curious child, full of life and an insatiable love for exploring the woods and creeks around Willow Creek. The forget-me-not was her favorite flower. She loved to press them into books and give them as tiny, handmade gifts. The locket, a gift from Amelia, contained photos of Eleanor and her baby brother, Ethan, whom she adored. Then came the day that shattered their lives. A day etched into their memories with agonizing clarity, despite their efforts to bury it. Eleanor was 8, Ethan was 5. It was a beautiful, sun-drenched afternoon. Eleanor, with Ethan trailing behind her, had gone exploring near Miller's Creek, not far from the old covered bridge, a place they knew well and were allowed to go, with strict instructions to stay close. But that day, a stranger, a drifter who had passed through Willow Creek, saw them. He was a man with a dark history, later discovered to have been fleeing charges from another state. He approached them, feigning friendliness, offering candy. Eleanor, always protective of her little brother, instinctively pushed Ethan behind her, trying to shield him. What happened next was a blur of terror. The man grabbed Eleanor, and in the chaos, Ethan, small and quick, managed to slip away, hidden by the dense undergrowth. He ran, blindly, screaming, all the way home. By the time Robert and Amelia reached Miller's Creek, guided by Ethan's terrified cries, Eleanor was gone. Only her small canvas shoe lay by the creek bank, and a single, crushed forget-me-not. The town was galvanized. A massive search was launched. Every inch of Willow Creek and the surrounding forests was scoured. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The leads dwindled. The hope faded. Despite all efforts, Eleanor was never found. The official conclusion was abduction, presumed deceased. The man, a transient identified as Caleb Thorne, was eventually caught in a neighboring state months later on unrelated charges, and during interrogation, he confessed to abducting Eleanor, stating he had disposed of her in a remote, undisclosed location. He never revealed where. He died in prison years later, taking the true location of Eleanor's final resting place with him. The grief consumed Robert and Amelia. They were broken, their first child snatched away, and their second, Ethan, was a living, breathing reminder of the horror. A child who had witnessed, however briefly, his sister's abduction. The weight of it was unbearable. The local authorities, seeing their profound anguish and understanding the trauma Ethan had endured, suggested something drastic, something born of desperation and a misguided attempt at healing. They advised the Vances to try to move on, to shield Ethan from the unspeakable tragedy, to let him grow up without the constant shadow of his sister's disappearance hanging over him, to start anew, to pretend she had never existed for his sake. It was a decision born of profound pain and a desire to protect their surviving child. They moved across town, changed their daily routines, and, painstakingly, began to erase Eleanor from their spoken history with Ethan. Her room was packed away, her toys donated, her name slowly faded from daily conversation. They tried to build a new normal, a life where Ethan was their only child, spared the agonizing truth. It was a monumental lie, a burden they carried every single day, eating away at their souls. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering was tinged with the unspoken absence, the ghost of a child they had lost and deliberately buried from their son. Ethan listened, numb. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a picture far more horrific than his dreams had ever suggested. The whispers, the pleas, the urgency, they weren't just dreams. They were an echo from a traumatic past, a desperate cry from a sister who had never truly left him. His parents, whom he had always admired for their honesty and integrity, had committed the ultimate deception, not out of malice, but out of a misguided love, a desperate attempt to protect his innocence. The pain of their betrayal mixed with a profound empathy for their suffering. He saw the decades of quiet anguish in their eyes, the lines of worry etched deep into their faces. He realized the immense cost of their secret. They had lived with this heavy burden, alone, for over 40 years. But the anger was still there, a hot, searing flame. How could they? How could they have denied him his sister, his own history? As the story concluded, a new, terrible urgency settled over Ethan. Eleanor had been abducted, and her body never found. Caleb Thorne claimed he had disposed of her. But what if he was lying? What if the remote, undisclosed location was somewhere tangible, somewhere he could still find? The dreams, the locket, the strange connection. They weren't just about understanding the past. They were about finding her, truly finding her, and bringing her home, even if it was just her remains. His quest had now shifted from understanding a mystery to fulfilling a sacred, heartbreaking duty. His parents, still weeping, looked at him with a mixture of despair and a flicker of hope. Perhaps, after all these years, the truth, however painful, was finally ready to set them all free. And perhaps, just perhaps, Eleanor's voice was still calling, guiding him to where she truly rested. The journey was far from over. It had merely taken a darker, more personal turn. The confession from his parents, raw and agonizing, had ripped open old wounds but also shone a blinding light on Ethan's inexplicable dreams. The whispers weren't just a figment of his subconscious. They were Eleanor, reaching across the chasm of time, guiding him. The locket wasn't a random find. It was a breadcrumb, deliberately placed by fate, or perhaps by Eleanor herself, to lead him to the truth. Now, armed with the full, devastating story, Ethan's quest transformed from a search for a phantom to a sacred mission. To find his sister, to bring her home, even if only in spirit. His parents, though visibly shattered by the retelling, found a strange, fragile peace in finally sharing their burden. They offered every detail they could remember, every fleeting memory of Eleanor, every agonizing moment of the search. Robert, with a newfound openness, pulled out old photo albums, dusty and forgotten, filled with images of a vibrant, smiling Eleanor, often with a tiny, dark-haired Ethan by her side. Amelia recounted Eleanor's favorite songs, her quirky habits, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. These details, once withheld, now painted a vivid picture of the sister Ethan had been denied, fueling his resolve. The key to his renewed search lay in Caleb Thorne's vague confession. Disposed of her in a remote, undisclosed location. Remote, undisclosed. These words, once maddeningly unhelpful, now sparked a new line of inquiry. Ethan, the architect, understood landscapes, terrain, and the logic of concealment. He returned to the old mill not just to look, but to analyze. He studied old topographical maps of Willow Creek and its surrounding wilderness, cross-referencing them with police reports from the original search, looking for areas that might have been overlooked, areas difficult to access, areas that fit the remote description. He focused on the less traveled parts of the Willamette National Forest, particularly areas with steep ravines, dense undergrowth, or abandoned logging trails that branched off the main paths. He remembered the dream, the desolate coastline, the sense of sorrow. While Willow Creek wasn't coastal, the dream might have been symbolic, hinting at a place of isolation and finality. He spent weeks, sometimes days at a time, hiking these forgotten trails, his golden retriever Barley faithfully by his side. Barley, with his keen nose and unwavering loyalty, became an unexpected companion in this somber quest. Ethan often found himself talking to Barley, narrating his thoughts, the dog's quiet presence a comforting anchor. The physical toll was immense. He pushed his body to its limits, navigating treacherous terrain, battling thick brush, and enduring the biting cold of early spring. But the emotional toll was heavier. Every rustle in the leaves, every shadow, every unearthed rock seemed to whisper Eleanor's name. He saw her face in the dappled sunlight, heard her laughter in the wind. He was no longer just searching for a body. He was searching for closure, for peace, for the sister he felt so profoundly connected to, even in death. One blustery afternoon, deep within a rarely visited section of the forest, far from any marked trail, Barley suddenly stopped. His ears perked, his tail gave a low, hesitant wag, and he began to whine softly, sniffing intently at the base of a cluster of ancient, gnarled fir trees. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat. This wasn't Barley's usual curiosity. This was different. He knelt, following Barley's gaze, and began to clear away the thick layer of pine needles and decaying leaves. Beneath the detritus, partially buried, was a small, weathered patch of fabric. It was faded, almost indistinguishable from the forest floor, but Ethan recognized the pattern instantly from the old family photos. A small, blue and white checkered pattern, part of a child's dress. Eleanor's dress, and next to it, partially visible, was something else. A small, skeletal hand. Time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to this single, horrifying, yet profoundly significant discovery. Ethan's breath hitched. He felt a wave of nausea, followed by an overwhelming surge of grief, so powerful it brought him to his knees. He reached out, his hand trembling, but stopped himself. This was no longer just a personal search. This was a crime scene, a sacred resting place. He carefully covered the area again, marking the spot with a distinct rock formation, his mind reeling. He had found her. After 42 years, the whispers had led him home. He immediately contacted the local authorities, providing them with the precise coordinates and the chilling details of his discovery. The initial skepticism was palpable, but Ethan's unwavering conviction, coupled with the locket and the detailed story from his parents, compelled them to act. A forensic team was dispatched. The area was secured. The excavation was meticulous, respectful, and agonizingly slow. The confirmation came a few days later. The remains were indeed those of a female child, consistent with Eleanor Vance's age at the time of her disappearance. The small, blue and white checkered fabric was confirmed to be from a dress of that era, matching descriptions given by Amelia. And beside the remains, clutched in what would have been her small hand, was a tiny, intricately carved wooden toy horse, a gift from her father, Robert, that she had carried everywhere. The final, heartbreaking piece of evidence confirming it was Eleanor. The news, though devastating, brought a profound sense of closure to the Vance family. Eleanor was no longer just a missing person, a ghost in their memories. She was found. She was home. A proper burial was arranged, a quiet, dignified ceremony attended by Ethan, his parents, and a few close family friends who had known Eleanor. It was a day of tears, but also of a quiet, profound healing. The heavy burden of the unknown, of the what-if, was finally lifted. For Ethan, the journey had been transformative. He had started as a man of logic, his life neatly compartmentalized. He ended as a man forever changed, his understanding of reality expanded, his heart opened to the inexplicable connections that bind us. He had walked through the darkest corners of his family's past, confronted painful truths, and emerged with a deeper sense of self and purpose. The dreams, once a torment, were now a testament to a bond that transcended time and death. Eleanor had called to him, and he had answered. His parents, too, found a measure of peace they hadn't known was possible. The decades of guilt and suppressed grief began to recede, replaced by a quiet acceptance. They could finally mourn their daughter openly, honor her memory, and find solace in the knowledge that she was no longer lost. The family, once fractured by a devastating secret, was now, in its own way, whole again, united by a shared sorrow and the profound act of bringing Eleanor home. The story of Ethan, Vance, and Eleanor is a stark reminder that some truths refuse to stay buried, that the bonds of family can reach across the most impossible distances, and that sometimes the most profound answers come not from what we see, but from what we feel, from the whispers in the dark that guide us towards the light. It's a testament to the enduring power of love, loss, and the human spirit's relentless pursuit of closure. And that, my friends, is where we leave the incredible, heart-wrenching journey of Ethan Vance. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, if it touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video. Your support helps us bring more powerful, real-life stories like this to light. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the unexplained, the unbelievable, and the utterly human. Thank you for watching.